Hello, everybody. Happy end of July. Thank you for joining us via Zoom and Facebook Live. Today we are having our 6th buyer webinar in our series, Paving Your Way to Home Buying Success. How can we put our experience to work for you in putting your best foot forward and making the best offer that you can? It's a really interesting market right now. We'll get to that. My name is Kelie Gray. Girls, would you like to introduce yourselves?
I'm Deena Heppner.
I'm Trisha Moore.
I'm Isabel Rawson.
Ladies. So putting your best foot forward and making a competitive offer in the midst of other offers. This is a topic that is important to us that we chose because from both buyer and seller perspective, we are all seeing a lot of this within our office, whether we are writing a competing offer for a buyer or we have a listing that's receiving competing offers. So we thought it was very timely that we discuss this. If you're joining us Facebook Live, feel free to let us know where you're listening from. Let us know if you have any questions about the topic at hand or real estate in general. And we would always love the opportunity to set up a one-on-one consultation to discuss your dreams and goals and how can we help you get there. So, multiple offer situations. I think the bottom line with this theme is that not every seller is going to respond the same way. There's no blanket statement or general rule of thumb that the highest price wins, or that the first offer came in that the seller is going to choose to negotiate with that buyer first. There's no cut and dry path that a seller takes. So knowing that, what can a buyer do to make their offer the most appealing? Also, another overarching theme here is that as brokers and buyer and seller agents, before making an offer, we really need to call the listing broker and just start that rapport if we don't already have it, and ask questions. What closing date would work best for the seller? Things like that. Besides the price, and we're going to talk about those things, what is going to be compelling for a seller to sign this offer? So just talking with the other broker and getting as much information as you can. Okay, does the highest bidder win? Is it all about the price?
Not always,
Not
but
always.
a great starting point.
Yeah.
So if you know that there are other offers that will be on the table, it's not a bad idea to say if the property is listed at $500,000 to offer $1,000 more or $1,500 more right off the bat in the get-go, to let the seller know that you are highly motivated and you love their property. You can offer, well, there's a little game I want to say. So, you could ask yourself, will I be sad if I lose it at 505? Will I be sad if I lose it at 510? How about 515? Play with those numbers in your head and see at what point, you wouldn't be sad, or at what point you'd be really excited to get that property, at what price point that is. There's another tactic called the escalation clause or the eBay clause, which says, hey, if the property's at 500,000, I'll offer 505, but we'll go up to 520, for instance. And I'll go if there's another offer on the table. So let's start that one again. So if it's 505, I'll offer $1,000 over the other offer up until 520, for instance.
Okay.
So there's that, that tactic as well.
Right. And do you find that buyers, I think having a ceiling on that, what a buyer is willing to pay, is
For
very important. And the seller could have 3 other offers they're looking at. So with the escalation clause, it's you'll pay more than any other competing offer up to X amount of dollars.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. From the seller's perspective, this eBay escalation clause, it sounds great. Looks great, right? You're willing to pay more and more and more. Sometimes it, again, depending on the seller, because not every seller is going to respond the same way. It could have the potential to offend or kind of put the seller, like, oh, so you're willing to pay $520? Well, why didn't you just offer $520? Well, maybe I'm just going to counter you at $520. So it can go both ways. And again, having a conversation with the listing broker, they know their clients, they know their seller. How do they think the seller would feel about an escalation clause?
Right, exactly. And I think that's very important. Some brokers will guide their sellers to love it or not. And so having that conversation up front. I just had a transaction where it actually worked out great for my client. And so just having that conversation up front with my client, with our clients that we're representing, and then also with the listing broker and the client that they're representing to see what will work best.
Right. And from the selling broker and agent side, setting the expectations with the seller that, okay, we're in this crazy market right now, and things are, not everything has a competing offer, but don't you think we've really seen an uptick in the number of competing offers, whether it's 24 hours of being on the market or something that's been on 2 weeks, and then the cosmic dust just gets stirred up and all of a sudden there's 3 offers, 4 offers, even 6 months. I had that experience recently. It'd been on the market for that long.
Right.
And cosmic dust just got all stirred up. So setting the expectations with the seller and also with the buyer, this is a tactic that could work. Right. Okay. So the highest bidder doesn't necessarily win. What are other things that a seller is going to look at in the offer?
Well, they're going to look at not only the offer, but if you have, I guess, everything in place, all your lending, if you are getting lending, do you have a pre-qual? Is that with a local lender? It's very important. And then also, how much are you putting down? 20%? Do you have proof of those funds that they're immediately available? Or if it's a cash offer, do you have proof of those funds that they're immediately available? Just having all your ducks in a row is a good idea to just have that ready up front.
Okay. So Trisha, from the buyer's perspective, the seller's saying, show me the money. So how else do you do that when preparing an offer for your buyers? What do you advise them to do, once we start the process of looking at property and picking something out, writing an offer? What are things that our buyers can be doing so that if they are in a competing offer situation, that they're going to look really good?
Right, sure. As Deena mentioned, certainly talking to a lender, having your pre-qualification lender letter available is important. Is it with a local lender? That's even better. As you mentioned earlier, Kelie, everybody has a different set of important guidelines that they're going off of when offers are coming into them as a seller. So maybe they've been burned in the past by an out of area lender, and so that's really important. Are they working with a local lender?
Can I interrupt there?
Yeah, go for it.
I just had a buyer go under contract, and the first thing the listing broker said to me, are they getting a loan? And I said, yes. Are they working with a local lender? And that client didn't want to work with a local lender, and I advised them too. And as soon as he heard that, he said, well, I really doubt my seller will even look at it because we have multiple offers coming in. So
Right.
she turned around, got a pre-qual through a local lender. It worked out perfectly, and we closed last week.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, so important to find out what's important to them. And when we're assisting buyers, that's our job, is to find out from the listing broker what's going on with these sellers, what's important to them. And it may be dates. That's another big one. It may be that they have an event coming up in their life that they want to get through before closing, or they want to get out fast, or they'd like to rent the property back from this particular buyer if they'd be willing to do that. So finding out what's important to them is so important on our side, from our perspective, when we're assisting buyers. Just ensuring that we are making it as beautiful as an offer as possible. And oftentimes that means maybe cleaning up the offer to have less things for the seller to worry about. And that may be, okay, yes, I want a survey to be done, but this is a townhouse and it's not necessarily as important for this to be a hurdle for us to get over during the transaction. So maybe I remove that contingency. Or if you are up against 3 other offers and you're trying to be super competitive, maybe that's your opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to remove the inspection objection deadline, not the inspection termination or the ability to have an inspection done. We would certainly never encourage that, but just your inspection objection deadline, meaning that once you get there, you've had the inspection done, you're either moving forward or you're terminating the contract and your earnest money is protected, but you're not going to be asking the seller for anything. That's another way that you could make it as clean as possible, make it as appealing and attractive to the seller as possible. Same thing with, I think Deena had an interesting one with an appraisal recently, correct?
Correct. So I just had a listing with multiple offers, and the buyer that went under contract removed the inspection deadline and the survey deadline, and or kept the survey deadline, but removed the objection deadline, also removed the inspection objection deadline, and removed the appraisal objection deadline. With that can be a little scary. You can put a clause, if you are on the buying side, your broker can put in a clause that will go up to a certain amount. Say, I had a buyer go under contract and they had that clause in their contract that they would go up to $10,000 if it didn't appraise. To come closing with $10,000 additional. But after that, they wouldn't have to come up with any additional money. That can be scary, but it's a way to win over 5 offers.
Right. So eliminating contingencies, but still while protecting yourself as a buyer. That's the important thing, right?
Important.
Is to make it as appealing and attractive, like I said, to the seller, but also protecting yourself as a buyer.
Absolutely. And I think from the seller standpoint, we want the buyers to have their due diligence period with reviewing HOA documents and doing the inspection, looking at the seller's property disclosure. We want them to know everything about the property, be fully informed, so that nothing happens, down the road or 2 weeks prior to closing. So we want the buyers to keep those rights, and they are rights that a buyer has. Okay. Anything else about deadlines and contingencies, other than communicating, over communicating, setting the expectations with our customers up front? Anything else along those lines, girls?
think that covers it.
Okay. Back to show me the money and Trisha, using a local lender. We always say how extremely important that is. And I know you've had an experience where it's kind of like, I told you so, you should have used a local lender. But setting the expectations with the buyer and these situations. What else with the money? Earnest money, cash at closing. Talk to us about other terms of the whole financial picture that a buyer can do to put their best foot forward.
Increasing your earnest money,
Okay.
typically 1 to 2%. But if you would like to really show that you are serious, you're a serious buyer, you're ready to make this happen, increasing the earnest money or your cash at closing, anything that you can do to show that you are a strong buyer. If you can, that would certainly be one way to show a little bit of strength in your offer.
Sure. More skin in the game.
More skin in the game. You've got it.
The Colorado real estate contract, as we know, is extremely buyer friendly. So putting down a higher earnest money amount, it's our job to help protect a buyer's earnest money. So is there a greater risk? It shows more skin in the game, right? And that is appealing to a seller when we have multiple offers and we're comparing. Well, this one is $3,000 earnest money and this one is 15.
Right.
This one is putting 10% down and this one's putting 50% down.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things combined help make an offer more appealing or not.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Isabel, have you had a multiple offer situation recently where it came down to more than just the money, or do you have any other insight into, well, I know, other things to consider, besides the deadlines and contingencies and the price? What are the other nuances in making a clean offer? And what is a clean offer? What does that mean?
Exactly. So besides the money and deadlines, there's little fees that maybe you as the buyer can cover if you're not able to go 5,000 over list price. We have HOA transfer fees, which could range from $50 to $300. Maybe you cover that to show your good faith that you're willing to tweak it in a little way so that you could get the property. Same with transfer tax, whether there's communities and HOAs that have 1%, 2%, 2.5%, maybe you cover that. And that's of the purchase price. So maybe you say you're willing to do that. Or title insurance fees. Typically we have the seller pay that, but maybe in this case you do that so that you can secure your spot, hopefully, by covering all those little fees so that they have a little bit less to think about or worry about.
Absolutely. Within the contract, it's, all of these small fees, some are big and they certainly do add up. We're not minimizing the cost. For a seller, commission is typically the highest fee that they have. And then it's the title insurance policy. It can be a couple of $1,000s on up. And within the contract, it's check boxes, right? Who's going to pay this HOA transfer fee? Buyer, seller, split it 50-50. Mm-hmm. So it's negotiable. Even if it's standard for a seller to pay for the title insurance policy, which we would say it is, the buyer proposing to pay that's kind of cool. I like that. From the seller's perspective, a lot of times they want to know, okay, we've got this sheet and these things, and what's my bottom line? What is this scenario going to put in my pocket? And what is this scenario going to put in my pocket? And sometimes the higher price isn't necessarily the one. The higher price, the more commission a seller is going to pay, because it's typically based on the list price. So, for example, a buyer is willing to pay all of these other fees, title insurance, that could be $5,000, for example. That lowers the seller's potential capital gains, tax liability, and the amount of commission that they'll have to pay.
That's a great point.
Mhm.
Good things to think about from both perspectives.
Right.
Yeah.
When also making a clean offer, I like to joke and say that that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get a clean home. There's a section in the contract where you could ask to have the home professionally cleaned and the carpets cleaned and the windows cleaned, but maybe you leave that out this time because you can't come up in price or in other ways. And so that's savings for the seller as well. Clean offer. Or the furnishings. Maybe it's fully furnished and you don't want the furniture, but sometimes it's just easier for the seller to leave it versus trying to get rid of all of that. So you take on that, I would say, inconvenience or burden to make your offer stand out a little bit more.
Right. Right. And like we say, when we're showing property, is it fully furnished, mostly partially unfurnished? Well, whatever it's stated, it's still negotiable. We could advise the seller to, maybe they want to take the furniture, but it helps the property look better. It helps with staging and giving a buyer an idea of, how things can fit and flow. And a buyer makes an offer. Maybe they don't want the furniture. And because you had a conversation with me, you know that, and okay, well, sell it. Here's an offer with it unfurnished. You keep your furniture.
Right.
Even though I listed the property as fully furnished, maybe I actually do kind of want that. So who knows what's going on in the minds of sellers sometimes. And
Being collaborative, right? So like you always say, we're working towards the same goal here, whether it's a buyer or a seller. The buyers are wanting the property, the sellers are wanting to sell the property. So how can we weave that all together and make it work best for everyone involved? And I just had a recent transaction where it was being sold unfurnished, but the furniture was kind of important to my buyers. And so that was, like you said, just one additional tool that we used when negotiating. And it was a multiple offer situation.
okay.
And ours was the first submitted for those particular buyers. That was important, and they were going to address it in that manner.
Okay.
But then just the communication back and forth, we figured out what was important to all parties, and it ended up being not even remotely what was listed in the MLS or what we started with, but it worked out nicely. So
Good.
yeah.
And again, bottom line, us as brokers, working with each other, just being overly communicative, and we're on the same side. How can we make this work for everybody?
Right.
Sometimes people get hung up on furniture. As a buyer, if you're going to put your best foot forward, like Isabel said, make it as clean as possible. Don't muddy up the additional provisions section with a lot of extra stuff like the cleaning. Some brokers put that in a standard. We like to look at that on a case-by-case basis in order to present a clean offer for our buyers.
And a lot of investment properties are already professionally cleaned when listed, and nobody stays in them during the whole listing. So there's no need to even ask for the cleaning.
And isn't it funny how it can sometimes offend a seller too, as well?
Absolutely.
I just had a seller who said, why are they asking for it to be cleaned? We just had it professionally cleaned. And it's, it was just put in as a blanket in you could just tell the broker just threw it in, but it was more offensive at that point because it was like, well, do you not think it's clean? It's clean.
Right.
We just cleaned it. So
Or I just spent all day cleaning that.
right. Yeah.
That's a little bit harder. Okay.
Yeah.
So in this world of competitive offers and multiple offers that we're seeing in Summit County right now, it's a seller's market, low inventory, high buyer demand. What can we do to keep our buyers positive about the prospect of, hey, let's find a great place in the mountains? And not every scenario is going to be a competitive offer situation, but us setting the expectations. And how do we keep it fun for buyers in this environment, in this market? that we're in? What would you say? What would your advice be, or your takeaway?
My advice, my takeaway from all of this would be, just like anything in life, be prepared. It's going to be a lot less stressful and more fun for you as a buyer if you have your ducks in a row, like Deena said. Have that pre-qual letter ready so that you're not stressing later, like, you know, going on a hike and not packing a lunch for a 2-year-old. That's not going to turn out well. So let's get ourselves prepared so we have a great experience. That would be my advice.
I like that.
Yeah.
That is good advice.
My advice would be, if you do find yourself in a multiple offer situation, don't get scared away if you find out that there's a cash offer on the table and you're not able to pay cash. You can certainly still play in the game and possibly win the property. So don't let cash scare you away. Also, if you don't end up in getting the property, being the first in place, consider a backup offer. I've had multiple clients end up in first place and getting the home of their dreams by just putting in a backup offer.
Yeah, great advice.
Yes.
I would say be creative when it comes to putting in the offer and what's important to you, and making sure it's clean and seeing what boxes you could check to help out with some of the fees to get it.
Awesome. To Deena's point about backup offers, we are seeing more properties in this market. I'd say the past 12 to 18 months, probably, we've seen more properties fall through, go under contract and fall through, whether it's a competitive offer situation or not. Go under contract, fall through typically within the first week. Buyers sometimes feel, because of such low inventory, they feel a pressure from the market to make a very quick decision. And then they procure the property and then they sleep on it and think, what was I thinking? This isn't the perfect property for me. A lot of times they are terminated, before inspection or anything like that. So to Deena's point, writing a backup offer, putting yourself in primary position if that first contract does fall through, is very successful with buyers, because more properties are terminating once they do go under contract. Not a large percentage, but it is a possibility to get a property that is under contract. Thank you, ladies. I think there's some really good insight here. And bottom line, we're here to help. We have a lot of experience with buyers and sellers in this market, in this competitive offer market that we are in. And yes, it can be intimidating. Bottom line, it's going to be fun. I think we all believe that things typically work out the way that they're supposed to. And if you didn't get the property in a multiple offer situation, I think it's because a better one's going to come along tomorrow, and you're going to have your ducks in a row. You're going to have your pre-qual letter. You're going to have your proof of funds. You're going to have your checkbook handy for that higher earnest money amount, and really get the right property. So patience, I would say, patience and communication with everybody involved.
Absolutely. Love that.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you do have any questions about this topic, anything in regards to real estate, what's the weather like? What does Frisco Main Street and Breck Main Street look like right now? We're happy to chat. So we'd love to have the opportunity to sit down or via Zoom and talk more about what you're looking for as a buyer or a seller, and listing your property and setting the expectations from the get-go. We appreciate your time. We really do. We hope you find this valuable, and we'd love to hear what you think, and if you have any ideas for our next webinar. Okay, take care, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.